Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, it was a wild finish for USC, but they came out victorious in the Las Vegas Bowl. Fitting into the season, another close game, but they came away with a win. How are you feeling about this one 24 hours after the victory?
Yeah, it was great to get a win to finish off the season. Awesome to see this team find a way. Like you just said, we were on the losing end of some of those close games too many times this year, and games where we had the lead in the fourth quarter and we just couldn't find a way to get the job done. So it was great to be on the right side of that in the Las Vegas Bowl. This was a very good Texas A&M football team, and I know they had some players sitting out, especially on their defensive line, but so did we. We lost a lot of guys in the portal as well. So it was kind of an evenly matched game, and that's every roster right now in college football. There's a lot of young guys that had to play, and we previewed that, talking about some of the young guys that had to step up, and we'll talk about that in this recap episode. I thought they did a great job there, and most importantly for me, though, is we leaned on each other in the end. We didn't start fast. We didn't play the way we wanted to start the game, especially on offense. We found ourselves in a hole pretty early on, and defense kept us in the football game, but we were down 24-7 with 3 minutes and 45 seconds left in the third quarter. It really felt like, and I'm just being honest here, the game was over. It felt like it was out of reach. It felt like we weren't going to dig ourselves out of this hole, and then something just clicked for this football team. And I think that was sparked by the defense. So got to give huge credit there, and I'll give them their flowers when we get to the defensive portion of this game or of this episode. But we scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. The offense got things going, found a way to win. Big-time players stepped up in big-time moments. And, it was great to see us finish off the season on a high and get ready to go into this offseason, which is going to be very important for this USC football team going into next year.
Yeah, a lot to talk about in this episode. Excited to break it down with you, Cody. Before we do, just want to give a couple reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are Victory Pod USC. You can also send us a text. It's in the description of the audio version of this show. And I know I mentioned questions. We're going to have a no question episode once again. If you missed the preview, you announced some pretty exciting news, Cody. You are now a dad, and so we're still trying to figure out podcasting and dad life together. And so we thought we'd make this episode a little bit more efficient with no questions and just get into the meat and potatoes in and out quickly for you, Cody, so you can get back to dad duty.
Yeah, no, it's been, and if anybody watched the Trojan Tailgate show, that was brought up about 30 times, and it was an ongoing joke or a running joke about me being a dad. But yeah, no, it's been a crazy 2 weeks now. My son Brooks was born a couple weeks ago, so me and my wife have been just been having a blast being new parents. We're learning along the way, but I'm also trying to squeeze in some preview, some prep, all of that stuff to make sure that we have our episodes and our content getting pushed out. But like Keely mentioned, we wanted to make this episode strictly about the recap from the game from yesterday. It's now the days run together. It's Saturday. The game was on a Friday. The bowl games are getting crazy right now. So it's crazy too. The bowl game's been on a Monday, Wednesday. The playoffs are on a Tuesday. And then
I know
all these games, I'm all torn up and thrown off with everything. But yeah, we're going to do a kind of a season recap episode where that's going to be fully open to questions. So we thought if we did questions on this episode, it might get a little bit more tailored to that, but we're going to do a full recap of the season, what to look forward to going into next year. And I'll preview a little bit of that throughout this episode. But yeah, the next couple episodes coming up, we'll get back to the questions. So I promise we miss hearing from you guys. We're not forgetting about you guys, and we'll get back to that soon.
For sure. Okay, I want to jump into it, Cody. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs. Progress you can feel. Alrighty, let's start with the offense, Cody. You said it at the top, but it was a slow start for USC's offense, particularly for quarterback Jalen Hurts. I was curious what we were going to see from him because this was the most time he was given to prepare for a start. Overall, What did you take away from his performance?
Yeah, the offense struggled to get things going early on, and that was frustrating to see. And one of my keys of the game going into this was we need to be able to start fast. We had a month to prepare for this game. And there's two sides of it. I get that month off can be tough because you get a little rusty. You lose some of that rhythm that you're in. And I know we lost the last game to Notre Dame, but you do get into a rhythm and get into a routine of practice Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, walk through Friday, game Saturday. When you have that extended break during bowl prep, that can throw you off a little bit, but there's no excuse to not be prepared. And it felt like this team, in my opinion, on the offensive side of the ball, just wasn't executing at a high level. They weren't fully bought into maybe the game plan or feeling comfortable with the game plan, because when you go into a game like this, you have your first 15, right? And those are plays that you go over probably 2 weeks ago. They started getting into that first 15 script because of the time that they had to prepare. And it just felt like nobody was on the same page. And guys were not in the right spot. Maava did not look comfortable early on in this game. It took him a while to settle into this game, but overall, offensively, it was frustrating because you wanted to see them come out fast and firing and have to put up some points against a very good Texas A&M offense that was going to do the same. But like I said, our defense kept us out of the hole and did a good job of keeping us close in this game. But yeah, I want to start with Jaden overall before we get to the rest of the skill players in the offensive line on the offensive side of the ball. But like I said, it just felt like for me, the first 3 quarters, really, even the fourth quarter a little bit, just he never got comfortable. He never
Yeah.
felt like, or it never felt like he settled into the game, right? And it takes a couple completions or maybe a screen or one of those little tosses that Lincoln likes to run where you do a little pitch pass for a completion like he did in his first start to get things rolling, but he never had that play to spark that rhythm. It just felt like he was uncomfortable the entire game. The biggest thing for me that was frustrating was that his footwork took a step backwards in this game. I thought it got a little sloppy. You know, when you're going through progression and you want to have clean feet, it's always eyes before feet for my young quarterbacks at home, right? So if I'm at 1, I'm here. 2, my eyes go first and my feet follow, right? Because I can't throw it if I don't see it, right? So you've got to take your eyes there first and your feet follow. It felt like his feet were going left, his eyes were right. He was backpedaling. He wasn't in a rhythm. And it was a little frustrating too because the offensive line played well. It wasn't like he was constantly under pressure to where he was looking down at the offensive line the entire game and having to take off and run for his life. The offensive line did a good job. He had plenty of time to go through progression for the majority of the game. He just struggled to do so. And then another thing for me that was frustrating, it just felt like he was locking onto that first guy, right? He wasn't getting to the second option, the third option, throwing the football away, taking off and run. There was times that I wouldn't quite say it was him trying to be Superman, like we talked about before. No one to be Superman, no one to be Clark Kent,
Yeah.
and throw it away and be smart with the football. It just felt like he just wasn't trusting the play calling, or he wasn't trusting what he was seeing with his eyes. He was struggling to read defense the entire night, and it just felt like he was locking onto the first receiver, throwing the ball to them, and then trying to force a throw, and it was either boom or bust every time. Instead of, okay, 1's not there, I'm going to find 2. 2's not there, I'll go to 3. If 3's not there, I'll take off and pick up 4 or 5 yards, or I'll throw it away and move on. It just felt like he was locking into 1 and trying to force that. And a couple examples of that first interception to Mekhi Lemon. He was basically a gump route. And what I mean by that is a runoff. You're going to see Mekhi just take off and run out of the screen because you had Lake McCree running a wheel route, like a delayed tight end wheel route down the sideline. And for whatever reason, Maava just stepped back and kind of fading away, just threw it up there into double coverage to Mekhi. And it was, an off throw. This is another thing, talking about his footwork, falling off, didn't have accuracy on the throw. But either way, there were 2 guys there. I don't think Mekhi was going to make a play on it anyways. But if he just waits a second, trusts his protection, looks off at Mekhi, then goes to 2, finds McCree, might have been a touchdown. Probably would have still been running. I mean, he was wide open down the sideline. Another one for me is he forced a throw to Mekhi again on a go ball down the right sideline. It was a flood concept, which means Lake McCree is going to push up, sell like he's running over route, and then he cuts to the corner and runs kind of like a rounded off corner route, a banana route, if you will. And instead of that, he just tried to throw it up to Mekhi, forced it, locked onto the first guy instead of letting the play develop and finding number 2 in the scheme. And then the third interception, for me, that was the most frustrating one too. That was a 2-man concept, right? And we'll break this down a little bit and walk through it. And that's on this show. I sound like I'm talking a lot, but what we do here is I don't like to just throw out, hey, he did this, and this poorly, and then he did this, and this good, and then move on. I like to give a little bit more context so you can get inside the mind of a former quarterback or someone that played at USC or played in the NFL and what he should be going through and what he should be reading when I watched the film. But that was a 2-man route, so he had 8-man protection on the play. You're fully protected. We did a good job there. You have Mekhi Lemon running a go or a post or another gump route, and I say gump route, Forrest Gump, run, Forrest, run. Your job is just to take guys out of the play, take a corner, take a safety out of the play so that you had Jacoby Lane on the play running a deep over or a Dover route. So you go 1 to 2. If the back gets out, great. If he stays in protection, we throw it away, right? And when you're backed up, you cannot turn the football over. Another one there. He locked on Mekhi. Mekhi's running a gump route, clearing it out. There's a safety over the top. I'm hoping when I watched the film that Maava didn't quite see the safety because he threw it right to him, and the safety was 5 yards deep behind Mekhi, so there was no chance for him getting on top, and he just threw it up. And then you see Jaden kind of throw his arms up a little bit, which I don't know what he was thinking was going to happen there. Even if it was supposed to be a post or Mekhi was supposed to, bend it off, whatever he was going to do, there was still a safety over the top. Go down and work Jacoby on the deep over. He was covered as well. You're backed up. You're in your own end zone, throwing the football, throw it away or take off and run. We talk so much about him being a threat on the ground. You've got to throw the football away in that situation. You just can't make a bad play worse. But yeah, that was the most frustrating thing for me in this football game, is that I felt like he took a step backwards when it came to important things like reading the defense, going through progression, knowing where to go with the football, protecting the football. He wasn't constantly, like I said, trying to be Superman and making crazy plays. And the one that frustrated me too that can't happen is kind of the fumble that he threw where he had plenty of time to throw it away. The rusher or the defensive end was about 5 or 6 yards away from him. No one's there, just throw it away. Instead, he waits until he gets close to him, tries to throw it, then he's falling backwards and he throws a fumble. So those are some negatives for me, things that he has to improve on in this football game. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go over to the positives real quick because there are some positives that happen in this game, and we did win the football game, so I want to talk about that. And I know there's a lot of people that are frustrated with Jaden's performance, and it's easy to say, hey, this is only his 4th start of the year. He's a young player. He did play a good amount at UNLV a year ago, but that narrative has to start falling behind. We can't keep using that over and over. We have to see progression. We have to see him taking that next step forward in Lincoln Riley's offense. Some of the positives that I think he did take that next step forward for me are, I love the way that he fought in this football game. It would have been so easy for a sophomore quarterback in prime time, right? Everyone's watching, big stage, to have 3 interceptions, to have the start that he did for the first 3 quarters. He was 6 of 18 at one point. His completion percentage was very low, wasn't getting anything going. I think USC had less than 20 yards of offense in the first quarter. It would have been very easy for him to go back into his shell, to regress and just say, hey, I'm done. Take me out. My mind's completely out of the game. But he found something in the fourth quarter, or really in the second half, that was great to see. He still showed off some high-level throws, in my opinion. There were very far and few between. There weren't a ton of them like we've seen before against Notre Dame, against Nebraska, but he did show that NFL-level arm talent, something as an offensive coordinator I can work with, right? He threw an out route to Kyle Ford to the left sideline, which was great to see. That was a high-level throw. Let Kyle catch it and put his foot in the ground and get some more yards. The touch throw, or the 2 ball as we call it, a 1 is on a line, a 3 is the go ball with a lot of air. A 2 ball is kind of the touch ball that he threw over a linebacker before the safety to Jacoby Lane for his second touchdown. Beautiful. He let the play develop too, right? He knew that Jacoby was kind of the third option in that route. He was going to settle and then work over the linebacker. He waited there, stayed on his back foot, didn't get happy feet, didn't look around. He stayed firm and confident in the pocket and threw a beautiful throw over the linebacker and before the safety. And then, like I said, he looked great in the fourth quarter. That was a gutsy drive by him to finish that football game. That was great to see. I'm very proud of the way that he bounced back. But like I said, we've got to talk about the negatives because this is very important going into the offseason. This is a huge position for USC. It's probably the biggest question mark this offseason. But like I said, yes, there's a lot of negatives and there's things that he's got to get better and things he's got to improve on. But I don't want to discredit all the positives too. I was very proud of the way he fought. He threw for someone to say, hey, you played probably your worst game here at USC and you still threw 4 touchdowns and found a way to win the game. I think that is positive. So there are some good things to take away from that, but he's got to improve on some of the other stuff going forward.
4 touchdowns on the night tied the Las Vegas Bowl record.
Did it?
It did, and I think you're familiar with that record, Cody, considering you were the one who set it way back when in 2013, I believe. So look at that. Great to have you recap the bowl, given that you are the bowl game record holder. But you touched on it, and I kind of want to get into it. I feel like there's a glass half full and a glass half empty way to look at his performance. Glass half empty is, like you said, you throw 3 interceptions, you could very much mentally crumble and take yourself out of the game, but he was able to keep himself together, lead the Trojans to a victory. Or glass half empty, does it give you any pause about his future as QB1 for USC? Where do you lie in this like glass half full, glass half empty situation?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to our offseason episode and break down the entire position battle for that roster at the quarterback spot. But for me, Jaden is a very high risk, high reward type of player. That's the definition of who he is right now, right? He's going to make some of those plays where it's ooh and ahs, and he's going to show off that NFL level arm talent. And he's going to scramble around when you feel like the play's over and you're saying throw it away. And then he finds Jacoby Lane in the back of the end zone against UCLA for the go ahead touchdown, right? Or he finds a play in this game where he's holding a little bit long, but then he steps up in the pocket and finds Jacoby over the middle or Mekhi Lemon over the middle. And it's a big time play when it feels like maybe he should have thrown it away. But the other side of that, and we saw that with the 3 interceptions in this game, where he's going to force some of those down the field throws and try to have the home run play every time, when it's okay to just take a check down or take the underneath route or get to your second and third progression or throw it away and move on, right? So that's a very difficult and frustrating place to be in as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, when you have a quarterback, because as a play caller, you want your quarterback to protect you. I want to know that I can call shots all game long because you have the arm talent to make those plays, but I also need to know that you're going to protect me when we don't get the look or the coverage that we want, and you're going to check it down and you're going to throw it away and protect the team, right? That's so important as a quarterback. So I say all that to say, for me, no, I don't think he's shown enough to be quarterback 1 going into the offseason or be guaranteed that spot. And he could have played perfect, and I still don't think it would have been guaranteed, right? This is USC. You've got to compete every single season. But I don't think he's shown enough to be the front runner as starting quarterback for next year, but I also don't think he's taken himself out of the race. And I think that's important to say because I think it's going to be very fun to watch this offseason with him and Hassan Longstreet, who's now on campus, who was at the bowl game.
Yeah.
And Keely announced he's going to be number 4 in that game. We also did a full breakdown on that. She announced that on Trojans Trojan tailgate show
Yeah.
and preview, which was cool to see him out there with a jersey on and everything, you know. And for those of you who don't know, who aren't following along closely with the recruiting and all of that, he's a 5-star quarterback, went to Centennial High School out of Corona, very excited about his future. But I think it's going to come down to him being able to compete with Jaden Maiava. I think it's going to be fun to watch him go back and forth this entire offseason. But also the other side of that is you can't play Longstreet if he's not ready. So I don't want to rush him because you think, okay, Jaden's not taking that next step. So we've just got to put Longstreet in there and hope he can save this program or hope he can go out there and be the guy that we want him to be as a true freshman. Because if you rush him and put him in there too soon, it's like the NFL. You know, it's like college with some of these freshmen. If you play them when they're not ready, they'll start to regress a little bit and they lose that confidence. And then the other option that we can take and is if Maiava doesn't continue to progress or we don't think he's going to be the guy next year and he doesn't show that in the offseason taking the next step forward and we don't think Longstreet's ready and this coaching staff doesn't feel confident throwing him out there as a freshman, we're going to have to look for someone in the portal, but we're going to have to do it quickly because we are late to the portal party. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of high-end quarterbacks, and I know they're rated by stars now when they go into the transfer portal, but I think the top 8 or 9 guys are all already committed to other programs, right? So we're late to the party. And if we felt like we wanted to get a transfer quarterback, we had to do that right away, almost as soon as the portal opened. But I think it was kind of that middle ground to where Coach Riley felt like, okay, maybe Maiava hasn't done enough to be the guy, but I also don't want to hurt his confidence by going out and getting a guy that maybe he's not better than him, So it's an interesting area. I think it was a gray area for Coach Riley this offseason with that because obviously we didn't go get a transfer quarterback and we rode with Maiava in this game, and I think we're going to ride with him in the offseason. But if we do go to the transfer portal now, you're going to have to go get maybe a lower level or a lower rated quarterback that may not even be better than Longstreet or Maiava. So do you just add another face to the program and maybe he can be, a decent backup or someone that can compete with these guys? So that's a huge question, and we'll talk about that a little bit more with our offseason episode. But yeah, just kind of to answer, wrap it all up. No, I don't think Maiava's done enough to be the guy or to guarantee to be the guy next year. And I think it's going to be a big competition between Longstreet and Maiava this offseason.
Yeah, and in that sense, we're already gearing up for a very important spring camp for USC. And I know I say this like the day after the season ends, but it never really stops in that sense, Cody. I want to talk about USC's wide receiver performance. And I was curious to see how that would play out because with several departures, how would they rotate or rotate at all? And I think it was interesting. It almost kind of forced their hand a little bit, Cody. We didn't see as much rotation as we saw throughout the season. It really seemed like they were focused on Jacoby Lane, Mekhi Lemon, and Kyle Ford. And it seemed to kind of spark their progress in that sense. What did you see overall from that rotation, but also their performance?
Yeah, that's a great point. I saw it the same exact way as you did. And we talked about this a little bit on the preview episode or on the Trojan Tailgate show as well about, when you have some of these guys that are playmakers in a crowded wide receiver room leave, now you've just got to lean on 2 guys instead of 4 or 5 guys. And does that become more beneficial because now they're going to get into a rhythm? They're going to be out there the entire time. They're not rotating. We're not having 10 or 12 different guys touch the ball in the game. We're focusing on 3 or 4 main targets. And Jordan Moore talked about this too on the preview episode a little bit, or on the Trojan Tailgate episode before the game, is this could be almost a positive, although everyone's freaking out about the transfer portal and guys leaving and Deuce is gone and Zachariah is gone and all these, which it does hurt to see them leave. Don't get me wrong. I wish them nothing but the best. I think Deuce is a phenomenal player. I think Zachariah is going to get back to the player that we saw as a freshman and get back, and I wish them nothing but the best. But there was a lot of frustration and people freaking out about them leaving, but it also put more attention and it allowed Mekhi and Jacoby to step up a little bit and say, hey, we're all right, guys. We're still here. We can take over and be that duo that you guys need. And they did just that in this football game. But before I get to them, and I want to break down a little bit what they did and how excited I am about their future, but I got to give flowers to my guy, Kyle Ford. You just mentioned him there at the beginning, but that was so cool to see him. That moment, he caught the game. And I'm getting the chills right now just talking about it. I'm a former athlete. Those moments for me are just so cool to watch because even if you don't play the game, even if you're a diehard fan and you put your blood, sweat, and tears into either being a player or a fan, or you pour everything as a Trojan fan and the Trojan family into a program, you can just see that emotion and what it meant to him. And you can feel that when you're watching the game. So it's so cool to see him get that game-winning touchdown. It was so fitting, too, the way that he finished his career. And I've given Kyle a hard time about going to UCLA. He went to the wrong school for a little bit. He put on that ugly powder blue and gold over there with the Bruins, but we forgave him. He came back, but no, that was so cool to see. I was so happy for him. And I saw a stat too. Someone may have to fact check us on this. I tried to look back, but I couldn't find it. It said that his first ever catch as a Trojan and his last ever catch as a Trojan were both touchdowns. Is that, you're shaking your head? Yeah, was that correct?
That is correct. His first touchdown was in garbage time against Oregon, and it came from Keaton Slovis. For some reason,
and that was his first catch?
That was his first catch. I believe so, but I will have to fact check that. Also, I just want to give another fun fact. Kyle Ford is the first FBS player to score a touchdown for the game-winning points in the final 10 seconds of his final collegiate game since Iowa's Warren Holloway caught a 56-yard touchdown pass from Drew Tate as time expired to beat LSU in the Capital One Bowl on January 1st, 2005. So it's been a long time. I know I just spit out a lot of stats there, but I thought that was a really unique and interesting stat as well.
I'll tell you what, too, that's funny you said that, getting a little off topic here, but there's a stat for everything nowadays.
Seriously.
So it does not surprise me that there was a stat for that. But no, he has dodged me. Kyle, if you're watching this, and we're friends now, so I've talked to him much. He is dodging me on the golf course, though, so I don't want to give him too much credit because I see him playing some nice course. He was playing PGA West the other day on their bye week, and my invite must have got lost in the mail. So I won't give him too much credit there. But no, it was so cool to see. So I got to give him his credit, man. Just when he was kneeling in the end zone, for those of you who don't know, there's a cool picture about it too. But after he caught the touchdown, was kneeling in the end zone, you could see him just break down, got a little emotional, came to the sideline, and his teammates pumped him up. So huge credit to Kyle. So glad that he came back to be a Trojan and came to his senses after he went to the wrong school. But that's going to be a memory and something that's going to be in Trojan history forever. So that's awesome. But now moving over to the playmakers in this game and guys to get excited about for the future. I'm going to start with Mekhi Lemon. I put in my notes and I watch the game film. When I go back and watch it, I try to watch it like as an evaluator, as a quarterback that I'm getting ready to play with this guy, or a guy that I'm going to play against, or I'm a coach. How can I use this guy to my best advantage? The first thing I wrote for Mekhi, electric, athletic, just a playmaker. He's so much fun to watch. His body control with some of those catches are unbelievable. I mean, he had I think it was the last drive of the game or towards the end of the game, had an over route. I think it was the last drive of the game, a little over route or a bender over the middle. Jaden was off with his accuracy, put it behind him, but he's still going full speed, kept his body control and allowed himself to catch the football behind him, still stayed upright, protected himself from the hit, and then obviously picked up a first down. So that was great to see. He is just so athletic, not only as a route runner, but with the ball in his hands. And he really is becoming, when he's on the field, on offense or defense, all 22 guys on the field, when he's on the field, he's the most athletic player out there. And it's starting to become more and more evident. And that is so much fun to watch, even on special teams. And not to toot our own horn, but Keely and I, if you're a fan of the Victory Podcast, you've been watching for a while. We've been saying this since his high school tape 2 years ago. About how good this kid can be and how excited I was when I was breaking down Malachi Nelson when he was committed to come to USC, that he was playing with him at Los Alamitos. And I was like, who is this guy he's throwing to? And then lucky enough for us, it ended up being Mekhi Lemon. And he's a team firster. And last year he played defense a couple times when they needed him to play DB. Then he played receiver in the bowl game. Then he comes back this year and has to wait his turn sitting behind some guys. So that was great to see. And then the other player, and the guy that I don't know, I'm torn. I was going to say most excited about, but it's a toss-up for me right now between Mekhi and Jacoby, who's going to be that next superstar. Hey, it might be both. It's going to be like, for me, when you have, Juju just now as a freshman and Nelson on the team, and Juju's waiting, or you got Marquise Lee as the guy, and then Nelson's waiting in line when I was here. So, or you got Robert Woods, and then Marquise Lee's waiting behind him, so they can really be that same, or that duo. And both are the same class. So we're just spoiled to have both of them. But going over to Jacoby, he is the first thing I wrote down. He's one of one. He really is. His body type, his size, his athleticism. He kind of runs too, very lanky, kind of like, and I don't want to say goofy, but he seems like
it's like Gumby a little bit.
Yeah, not as coordinated as he is, but he is an absolute stud athlete. He is so impressive. His ball skills, and we saw it this year with some of those one-handed catches. The one against, I think, was it Maryland on the road? He had one where he snatched it over a guy with one hand, the size of his hand, just his catch radius is off the charts. And what I mean by that, and the perfect example of that, is go back and watch Calvin Johnson, go back and watch Megatron. It's the originator of, the saying, I got to modify here a little bit, but screw it, he's down there somewhere, right? And how that, obviously they say something else, but I'm just going to throw it up into triple or double coverage. But I know Jacoby Lane, because of his catch radius, can go get the football. Now, I'm not comparing him to Megatron. I'm not putting him in that category, but it reminds me a little bit of his ability to go up and take the football away from defenders in double coverage, in triple coverage. He is that good, in my opinion, with his size and his catch radius combined. And I think in this game, we really saw when he's used the right way or in multiple ways and targeted more, he is one of the most talented wide receivers in the country. What I love, because this year he's been more so a possession receiver, a go ball receiver, a fade receiver, right? We're using him in the red zone. We saw first touchdown, crosser route. He's an athlete. Get him the ball in space, right? He's got a long stride. He's a two strider or a two stepper, which means he covers 5 yards every two steps, right? So he's not a quick, speedy, choppy guy, but he can lengthen his stride and put some sneaky speed out there. So he is so much fun to watch. I think he's going to be a stud on Sundays, but we are very fortunate to have both Jacoby and Mekhi going forward. And like I said, I wish Deuce and Zachariah nothing but the best, but when you kind of tighten the wide receiver room down and you don't have to try to keep everybody happy, right? You're not trying to feed everybody the football. You're not trying to get Zachariah a touch, then get Deuce a touch. Okay, now it's Jacoby's game. Now it's Mekhi's game. Now you got Kyron Hudson also will be missed, but it's Kyron's game this time. Kyle Ford, when you're trying to spread the football to too many people, you kind of lose out on how good guys can actually be. And a perfect example of that is when you look at some of the most explosive and dynamic offenses in the NFL, they have that 1-2 punch, right? They have that star wide receiver with a semi-star or a half-star right behind him, right? And some examples of that, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison with the Vikings, right? When Justin's having a great game, it's his day. But if he's not and he's getting double coverage, Jordan Addison comes in to save the day. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith with the Eagles, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, right? Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Those are those 1-2 combos because, yes, you have a third receiver that's important like Kyle Ford was in this game and like some other guys on this roster that can step up and be that third guy. But it really comes down to the best offenses in NFL, in college football, have a star one and a star two receiver, right? And the two is not very far behind that one, or you don't really know some games who the one is, right? And that's what it came down to in this game. So that was great to see. And I know I understand it's important to have a ton of playmakers and you want to get the ball to different guys and you want to have so many weapons that the defense doesn't know who to cover. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. I've said it all season long. It is so important to have a Nelson Aguilar, to have a Marquise Lee, to have a Juju Smith-Schuster. Like when I was playing to that, I knew when it was crunch time, when the game was on the line, when it's fourth quarter, or I needed someone to step up and have a big game, or they're going to get open no matter what, I could go find my go-to guy. And if he wasn't open, there was someone else that I could find as well with that 1-2 punch. So I think we're starting to see that, and I think we're seeing the benefits of, and it's tough to say, it's frustrating to say some of those guys leave, but I think you see the benefits of how important it is to just have one or two guys that get majority of, the targets instead of trying to get 12 guys a touch every single game.
Second consecutive game of 3 touchdowns for Jacoby Lane. Just insane. Have you heard of a run like that recently, Cody? I can't think of anything off the top of my head as far as USC wide receivers go.
Oh, he is putting himself into that category. He's and maybe it's the numbers. I don't know. I've said before, he reminds me a little bit of DJ, and I don't want to put him in that category. Dwayne Jarrett, someone that it was so much fun for me to watch growing up, but I don't know if it's a number. Reminds me a little bit of him. Mekhi Lemon, I'm still trying to find that comparison a little bit, but he is so much fun to watch. Both of them are just really starting to make a name for themselves because we saw flashes of it throughout the year. Mekhi Lemon was probably our most consistent receiver, but Jacoby, when he's on and he gets the targets that he deserves and he's used, like I said, in a little bit more of an extended role instead of just a red zone or a fade guy, he has that ability to be a top end wide receiver one in college football.
One of the biggest question marks coming into the game on offense was USC's offensive line. Who was going to start and where were they going to start? So overall, that was a question mark. But then Elijah Page goes down in one of the early series. Just unfortunate on that front. But then you go, who's next? Who's next up for USC? Overall, Cody, though, I thought it was an impressive performance given how quickly that starting five had to find chemistry in the game.
Yeah, that Elijah Page injury was tough to see. And for me, that was someone that I was so excited about this season. A lot of high expectations going into the year. He played great in the bowl game last year against Louisville in the Holiday Bowl. Struggled a little bit early on this season, but in my opinion, he was the most improved player on this entire team, not just offensive line, but the team as a whole. So that was a tough loss for this football team early in this game, but a lot of guys stepped up, and it was great to see with all the circumstances going on, all the adversity with this offensive line, so many new faces. They played great all night long. Now, was it perfect? No, but like I said, with the circumstances and everything stacked against them, I thought they did a great job. And what I mean by that is new offensive line coach this week, right? Coach Henson leaves. Coach Hansen, who was a tight end coach, now moves over to O-line. So you don't know how that dynamic will affect a little bit. Then you have a new center, like you mentioned with Killian O'Connor. Then you have your left tackle go out. So now you have two new tackles with Tobias Raymond and Justin Taunu. So there are so many question marks going into this game, but they performed at a very high level. Like I said, only gave up one sack the entire night. They allowed Jaden Mayava to go through progression. I know he struggled a little bit with his accuracy, with his footwork, but it wasn't because he was under a constant duress. He had time to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and take off and run because our offensive line did a great job in pass protection, and we did a good job in run blocking as well. And normally at this point, we kind of move on and say, hey, way to go, O-line, and don't call them out by name. But I'm going to do that here because it's the last game of the year, and I'm a former quarterback, and I fully believe in showing some love to those big guys up front because they don't normally get all the praise that they deserve.
Yeah.
And Keely, you know, and all fans know, if you're an offensive lineman and your name gets called or you hear their name a lot, especially during the broadcast, it's normally for a bad reason.
Yeah,
It's
not
because
great.
of it's not great if you know the offensive line by their first and last name by the second or third quarter because they have 3 holding calls or they have 2 or 3 false start penalties and they're getting beat off the line. But you don't hear them a lot on the positive side of things. So I got to give them credit for the guys in this game. Elijah Page, like I mentioned, at left tackle, played great, excited about his future. Got to get him back healthy. Emmanuel Pregnon, I am so extremely happy that he's coming back. That was huge news, and I think that was important with the decision that Coach Riley made to immediately hire Coach Hansen. I think that played a big factor in Pregnon coming back, knowing that, okay, I'm comfortable with this coach. I've worked with him before, although he was with the tight end. So I think that was great by Coach Riley on his part to make that decision, and it's going to pay dividends with that left guard position next year with Pregnon. And he was committed to the East-West Shrine Bowl, so it felt like writing's on the wall. He's gone. Hayes in the barn. Wish him the best. You know, bags are packed. The last thing to do is just give him a high five on the way out. Surprises everybody, and he's coming back. So that's huge news. Next guy, Killian O'Connor, take a bow, man. You played a phenomenal football game. What a difficult spot to be put in, and he absolutely stepped up. It's not easy, but it's easier to go in as a left guard, as a right guard, as a tackle, to get the calls, to get echoed and worried about one-on-one blocks or worried about, combo blocks. But to go in and play center for the first time, in a bowl game against a good SEC opponent or SEC opponent on, not on the road, but at a neutral site with crowd noise and all of that going on, and to perform like he did, that was great to see. So I'm very happy for him. Couldn't happen to a better guy too. He is a team firster. He's been riding this team for a couple years now. So that was great to see Lonnie Noah. Yeah, preferred walk-on, wasn't a scholarship guy. And when you're a walk-on, like, you never know when that time will come or if it will ever come. But you have to stay ready. It's tough because it's like, okay, I'm preparing in the meetings. I got to stay locked in, but I don't even know if I'll ever even get a shot. And you could list me as a backup or a third, but if push comes to shove, are they going to move another guy in front of me from a different spot because they don't trust me as a walk-on? And Coach Riley obviously had full confidence in his guy, and he went out there and performed well. So that was awesome for Killian. I was so excited for him. Another guy, Lonnie Noah, we've talked about him a lot. Got to give him credit at that right guard spot. Probably second most improved this year behind Elijah Page up front. He's done a good job for us. And then the 2 tackles was great to see. Tobias Raymond, in my opinion, excited for his future. I think he's going to be a very good player, a starter for this offensive line going forward. Kind of got thrown in the fire this year against Michigan, had to get thrown in there when Elijah Page went out. Moved Mason Murphy over to left tackle. Tobias gets thrown in at right tackle against a very good defense and went out there, struggled a little bit, but performed well, got his feet wet, got, a little bit of experience that I think really helped him in this game. But he did a great job last night against Texas A&M. And then my MVP in this game. And I know it's easy to say, Jacoby Lane, the skilled players, the athletes, 3 touchdown catches. Jade Mayavaleta, struggled, but he threw 4 touchdowns, came back, game winning. He's a hero. Put him on your shoulders, and everyone's excited. Or Brian Jackson, who I'm going to talk about in a second, who I'm very excited about, by the way. And we've talked about that. And Keely gets to toot her own horn a little bit for being a Brian Jackson believer. But those guys normally get the credit as MVPs. I'm throwing that out the window. My MVP of this game was Justin Tawanuu, a freshman from Huntington Beach. If you don't know the name, get familiar with it. That was a gutsy performance. What a great job for him to come in that situation and play the way that he did. Because when you're a freshman or you're playing in this game, Killian O'Connor, right, and as impressive as it was, he got to prepare with the starters. He got to get ready all week. Those practices, he got to get used to playing with Mayava, playing as a starter, calling the play calls, and making the calls up front as a center. With Tawanuu, he was a backup, so he didn't get a lot of time with the ones. And then Page gets hurt a couple plays into the game, and now Justin's in there, right, with not a lot of experience and nothing to lean on, but he played phenomenal. I went back and watched his film. I said, okay, I'm going to go back, watch Justin's film, really break this down about what we have going forward. I wrote in all caps, I am very impressed with him. I watched about 30 plays of his, both in the run game and in pass protection. Got a very bright future in pass protection. He has a great base. He understands fundamentals. He didn't get his feet too close together. He didn't get too wide, had a firm base. He used his hands in pass protection, which is so important with his 6'6" frame because he has that long wingspan. And if you let the defensive end as a tackle get close to you, or really any offensive lineman, when they get tight and you can't extend out, you lose. Now they have the advantage. Now they're too close for you to extend out and control them. Did a great job of being firm with his hands, getting up underneath the breastplate of those shoulder pads and control the defensive lineman or the defensive ends all game long. Very impressed with that. And also on the run game, I thought he was very athletic, physical, and run blocking. You normally see freshmen a little timid and scared to get off the football and fire off and go be physical. Now it helped a ton to have Emmanuel Pregnon right next to you and give you that confidence. Their combo blocking was great, but Justin Tawanuu, man, take a bow as well. You played a phenomenal football game. I'm very excited for his future and this offensive line as a whole.
It was kind of ironic how his start or his, getting thrown into the fire was similar to what happened to Elijah Page in the Holiday Bowl last year. Granted, Elijah Page knew coming into the game that he was going to be the starter at left tackle, but I do think it's interesting that the coaches probably got a longer runway of what Justin can do than they were expecting. I wonder if it changes maybe their thoughts of what the rotation or configuration for next year's offensive line could be.
Yeah, 100%. But I will say this, though, real quickly before we move on, is that's a good problem to have. It really
Yes.
is, because when you get to the point to where, like, okay, Justin came in and Killian played and Tobias played and all these young guys, Alani Noah's struggling, Elijah didn't play well, and you're like, okay, now we got to start from scratch. But when you have freshmen come in and step up and play like they did, it adds depth. It adds value to that position unit or that position room. So like I said, it's a great problem to have, and I think he's going to be someone that is absolutely going to be competing for a starting role next year, whether it's tackle, left, right, wherever it may be. Obviously, Elijah hopefully will get back healthy and be at left. So it'll be interesting. Do they keep, a competition between Tawanuu and Tobias Raymond at right tackle? Do they move Tobias around? Do they move, different guys in different spots so they can all be on the field? But it sounds like a broken record every single year. That's something we're going to keep our eye on because we never know who that 5 is going to be. But It's a good problem to have right now for USC coming out of that football game.
Well, as you mentioned, Cody, we need to talk about Brian Jackson. He scored his first collegiate touchdown on Friday. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, it was great to see him get an opportunity. Another guy that made the most of it. And like we talked about in our preview episode, these games are so important to kind of springboard you forward into the offseason to make a statement as a younger player or a backup or a third string that hasn't got a ton of reps to show that you can be the guy going forward. I feel like Brian Jackson did just that. And also, like I mentioned, Keely and I have been very high on him. And I remember you telling me in fall camp, hey, keep an eye on this Brian Jackson kid. He's going to be a good player. And sure enough, that held true. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds. So he's got great size and he's got great strength. But you pair that up with some sneaky speed, but also very good vision. And when you break down his film, I love how decisive he is when he runs the football. That tells me that that's a confident young running back. Normally, when you get a freshman, a sophomore, a guy with not a lot of experience at that running back position, in a big time game like that against a good opponent, they get very hesitant, right? Yep. And they hesitate and they think, okay, the hole's there, but I'm not quite sure. I'm going to try to bounce it out when I should have cut back, or I'm going to cut back when the hole, collapsed and I should have bounced it out. You start second guessing yourself a little bit, not trusting or believing what you see, right? And trusting your eyes. And as a running back at the high school level, the hole's right here. College, it gets to here. NFL, it gets even smaller. And if you're late and not decisive, it's a tackle for loss instead of a 4 or 5 yard positive gain, right? So that was huge for me to see. And that tells me that Coach Anthony Jones Jr. has done a great job preparing him.
Good point.
He worked a lot with Woody Marks throughout the year. I even read, weren't they roommates? Wasn't that one of the stories that came out, that they were travel roommates on the road? And that's so important to be able to learn from a guy like Woody to help him develop. And that was showing, or that held very true in this football game. He has a potential, or the potential, to be an absolute star in this offense. And I truly believe that, to become a big-time name in college football. And this is just such a small sample size. Obviously, he's going to have to continue to prove that and develop and get better year in and year out. But he's already set the bar so high for himself that I think his ceiling is through the roof. It's sky's the limit for Brian Jackson as a college football running back. I'm so excited for him, especially with the departure for Woody Marks going to the NFL. Obviously, Quentin Joyner entered the transfer portal, so it leaves it wide open for Brian Jackson. That was his opportunity in this game. Amarian Peterson also showed a couple flashes here and there, which was exciting to see. And then the last thing I say before we move on with Brian Jackson is, and I've said it before, and the broadcast, the announcers in the game said this. I saw this on Twitter. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit because I said this first. Now, I'm not putting him quite there yet, but he reminds me a little bit of someone else who wore that 2-1 along. And I'm not talking about Sua if you're listening to this. I'm talking about on the offensive side of the ball. Another running back that wore that 2-1, and I love him to death. One of my favorite Trojans of all time, a good friend of mine, Mr. Thunder himself, Lindell White. He showed some flashes there. Maybe the way he held the football a little bit higher, like
Mm,
Lindell did,
yeah.
especially going through the hole, the way that he ran downhill, the way that he kind of dressed and carried himself a little bit, the size, the 6 foot 230. So I'm going to say that again on record. And I know Lindell would love that because he's a Trojan through and through. He loves to see those young guys, succeed. So I hope he can spend some time this offseason with Lindell if he hasn't already. Talk to him a little bit. I think that's someone that would be great to talk to. And Brian, if you see this too, if you need help getting in touch with him, let me know because I think the sky's the limit for you as a running back. So I'm excited about him. But yeah, that was just so much fun to watch. Hopefully he keeps that 2-1 going forward as well. But yeah, that there was a lot of yes, there were negative things in this football game as a whole. Yes, struggled a little bit at the quarterback position. Yes, that there was some injuries. Yeah, we didn't get things going on offense. Yeah, it looked sloppy at first, and you had all that time to prepare. But overall, there are so many positives in this game that has to make you excited about the future for USC football on the offensive side of the ball.
Now, I know you just kept it to the offense, but also excited for the future of USC's defense as well. And I want to get to that side of the ball. But before we do, Cody, any final thoughts on USC's offensive performance?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say before we move on, and I'll make it brief here. I just want to touch on it because I think it is important. I do think there's been times this year and in this game specifically that we could have been a little bit better with our clock management. And I'll talk in two parts here. The first one is in the end of the first half. It just felt like we didn't really know what decision we wanted to make in that scenario. And what I mean by that is I think we had a second down play call. We ran a second down play, picked up a couple yards, and there was about a minute or just over a minute to go before the half. We get up there, we line up on 3rd and 3, get ready to call play, act like we're going to call something, look to the sideline, then we call timeout. Confused me a little bit because I felt like we should have been a little more aggressive to try to pick up the first down, to try to go get there's Coda hopping up, to try to go pick up a first down or try to be a little bit more aggressive to go score there because Texas A&M was about to get the football coming out of half, right? So we wanted to have momentum on our side going into the halftime, and we had great field position. We were on the plus side territory. We're inside, I think, the 30-yard line, had a chance to go score. It was a 3rd and 3. It wasn't like it was a 3rd and 12 or a 3rd and 15 where we're just trying to play smart and play keep away at this point and run the clock down. We had all 3 timeouts. So anyways, we get up there on 3rd and 3 after that second down play call. We call timeout with 30 seconds left. I felt like maybe we let a little too much time run off the clock. I'm fine there calling a timeout around maybe 40 seconds, letting a little bit time run off so you still have enough for, a couple shots at the end zone if you do convert on this 3rd down or if you want to go for it on 4th down, but not running a play right away and letting it run down to that 30-second mark for me was just a little confusing. And then we go out and come out of the timeout. We don't really know what play to call there, or I guess it was a check with me, but it just felt like we weren't as organized as we should be. Pick up 2 yards on a run with Brian Jackson. Now we have 4th and 1. And this is where it really confused me because we called timeout with 18 seconds left. That tells me that we're going for it on 4th down, right? That we're going to try to convert. And then we have maybe 2 or 3 shots at the end zone if we do convert with another timeout in our pocket. But instead, we send the field goal unit out, which was a head scratcher because if you're going to kick a field goal on 4th and 1 and you're going to kick a field goal, let the clock run all the way down to 2 or 3 seconds, then call a timeout, then kick it so the play or the half is over regardless, right? So that was a little confusing for me. But again, wish we would have been a little bit more aggressive in that situation. And then at the end of the game is the second scenario to where, I know it was a confusing situation and it was kind of that loophole to where we got down to the 2-yard line. I think it was 2nd and goal on the 2. We tried to substitute late. We had some confusion on the sideline, had 10 guys on the field. Then Coach Riley mentioned that tried to run another guy out there, but didn't want to run it with 10 guys. But he knew running a guy out there would give them or Texas A&M time to substitute. And they did, the little slow jog off the field like they should. That's a loophole. That's a rule. And they're going to take advantage of that. So the play clock continues to run. The ref has to stand there and stop that. I hate that rule. I think there's got to be a way to fix it. But anyways, now we have a chance for a delay a game or we call timeout, right? So it's kind of a tough situation. I don't mind that. I don't mind the Coach Riley saving the timeout. Now you go from the 2 to the 7. I would much rather run a play to win the game on the 2-yard line, but saving that timeout was so important because if you do have a sack or you do have a fumbled snap or something terrible goes on, you're only down 3. So now you can fall on the football or take the sack, call timeout. The game doesn't end, kick a field goal, go to overtime. So I understand that, but the part for me that was frustrating is we've got to be on the same page. In that crucial of a moment, we can't have a delay of game. We've got to know who's substituting in, who's ready to go, who's going to be the personnel grouping. You've got to be 2 or 3 plays ahead. And it just felt like we were a little off there. Now, I don't know if that was Coach Riley or a coaching staff, mismanagement in that situation, or a player didn't get the signal and Makai ran on late, or whoever it was trying to figure out who was supposed to be on the field. So that's something that would, you've got to be in the headset, or you got to be on the sideline and know exactly what happened. But those are two situations for me that we've got to fix. And something that needs to be addressed going forward this offseason is that we have to be better in those crucial moments with clock management. If that means hiring someone to where their job, like we did in the NFL with the Patriots, with the Jaguars, with other teams that I was on, where specifically their only job was to focus on clock management so that the head coach could call plays or figure out personnel and all the other stuff. I wouldn't mind doing something like that, but whatever it may be, we've got to get that figured out so we aren't in some of those same predicaments that we were this year coming up next season.
This is actually a rare moment, Cody, where I'm going to add some final thoughts too. I actually have two that just came to mind. First off, I have to give you your credit because in the preview podcast, you made sure to note that Texas A&M's defensive line in particular loves to bat down balls. And boy, were you correct. I kept thinking during the game, wow, Cody was on the spot with that one. So just wanted to give you your props there.
And I think one of their guys had 6 pass defense. Is the guy that had the tip pick, right? And I tried to say in the preview episode, if I'm Jaden Mayava this week, work on arm angles. All my young quarterbacks at home, if you have defensive linemen that like to get up and tip the football and don't, they're not as aggressive in their pass rush, they're going to sit back a little bit, try to jump up and get in throwing lanes. Work on your sidearm, work on your 3/4, work on your over the top, work every arm angle that you can work, because those could be the difference. And in this game, that was something that we talked about. They love to do that up front when they don't get home and don't get pressure on the quarterback. And one of those led to a crucial pick that ended up, where Jaden tried to throw it over a guy, he tipped it, intercepted it, and they went down and scored. So that was something that was something to pay attention to. But I appreciate that, Keely. I appreciate you give me a little shout out there. So hey, if you want to. Next year, obviously not anymore this year, but anytime you want to know what's going to happen in the game, check out our preview episode, because I was going to be sarcastic. We know everything, but we're pretty
hey,
close
you're right.
On some of our call-outs.
You're right more often than not. That's what I'll say.
I appreciate it. Well, okay, what was the second one?
The second one, yes, it was actually about Elijah Page. I thought in warm-ups, because I was just trying to watch, I thought there were so many different variables that we were going to see this game. I was trying to be even more observational than usual. Elijah Page seemed to take over the leadership mantle on the offensive line. It seemed to me, even while on the sideline hurt. I thought that was really interesting. He was still really vocal with his guys, and the last score that the Aggies had, he looked at the offensive line and he was like, basically like, let's effing go. This is our chance. Let's do this. And like, if you're of lesser character, if you will, you kind of sit out and you're I'm out of the game, so I'm out of it mentally. But he was still locked in, encouraging guys, helping them get on the same page, helping Justin. So I thought that was just really cool to see from him, considering that this time a year ago, he was the rookie getting his first start. And here he is kind of being the leader, the emotional leader for his teammates. So I thought that was pretty cool. A little tidbit that I saw on the sideline.
No, that's a great point, and that speaks volume of the character on this football team. And Coach Riley has always preached that we're going to make sure that we have a lot of high character guys, and that we have a great core group of guys. I just flashback to, and you talking about Elijah being hurt and still supporting his team, Eric Gentry against Utah.
Yeah.
I think last year, a couple of years ago, with dang one leg hobbling out there with ice around his ankle, getting the defense hyped up, right? So that's great to see. And the other thing too for Elijah, and that's important to note, because that just shows his maturity, that shows his improvement, that shows his confidence going up, because it's tough to be that vocal leader when you're not performing on the field. And you can be the hoorah and the hype up and the guy, but if you're not getting the job done on the field, it's tough to get guys to follow you and want to play for you and want to believe in you and trust in you as a leader. So that's a good thing to bring up, because it shows that he is confident in himself on the field. Now that's starting to trickle over into him being a vocal leader as well.
Alrighty, Cody. Well, as promised, I want to move over to the defensive performance for USC. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Fight on. Now, speaking of what you said in the preview podcast, Cody, you talked about defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn and how he likes to dial up pressure, but you expected he might even do that even more so against a rookie quarterback in Reed. What did you see from Lynn overall on Friday?
Yeah, my first note is D'Anton Lynn is him, and him is in all caps. The turnaround, and this is going to lead into what I saw on Friday, but the turnaround that he's had in one season at USC from where we were the last couple of years has been unbelievable. But it's been so much fun to watch this defense, have confidence in their scheme, fly around and make plays all over the field, trust one another. They're not, one guy trying to do three different jobs. They're doing their own job because they know their buddy next to him is going to do his job. And it may not be my time to make the tackle, but I'm going to be in the right spot and keep gap integrity. And I'm going to have someone else fly to the football. There's the missed tackles. We had a couple throughout the year, and that's something that's going to happen. You're playing high level college football. You're going to have good offensive players. You're going to miss some tackles, but that was something that we cleaned up huge this year. On third down defense, we went from, I think, 120th in the country all the way up to top 15. So just so many things to be excited about. We were giving up 35 points a game last year. We only gave up around 22, 23 this year. So just so many things from Danton Lynn that I saw in this game and throughout this entire season that makes me so excited about the future of this USC defense. And I pray and hope that no one tries to come get Coach Lynn, because he is going to be a very hot commodity as a head coach whenever he does want to make that jump. So he's one of the premier coordinators in the country. So thankful for what he's done for USC's defense. But yeah, going to the game, this was evident again. Another masterclass by Coach Lynn. And you can say, okay, we struggled on that opening drive. We couldn't find a way to get a stop there at the end. Yes, those things are true. But if you look at the bulk of the game, if you look at the game as a whole in the context, he called a fantastic football game, constantly brought pressure all game long on Marcel Reed, never allowed him to get comfortable, especially after the first drive. Texas A&M got into a little bit of a rhythm, and it felt like, okay, they're making some big time plays and we've got to start a little bit faster on defense. Sure. And that can, work hand in hand, complementary football with our offense, also putting together a better drive. But after that first drive, the end game adjustments were phenomenal. What I mean by that is, it felt like coming into the game, Coach Lynn thought, okay, we're going to put pressure on Reed. We're going to contain him. We're not going to let him hurt us, but we're going to still play smart and kind of fill out the game plan. After that, he turned the pressure up to 11. There was Kamari Ramsey coming off the edge. I can't tell you how many times he blitzed in that game. You had corner pressure. You had safety pressure. You had multiple linebacker pressure. Third down for Marcel Reed was a nightmare. It was a masterclass, like I said, on third down. Overload left, overload right. You had 11 guys, or not 11, but 7 or 8 guys walked up, and then you drop out 7 or 8 into coverage, or you only bring 3, or you bring all 7, and now you go cover 0. Joe, it was just so much fun to watch. Danton Lynn was in such a great rhythm in this game. And the reason I say that context matters is because our offense, especially with the turnovers, consistently put our defense in bad spots, consistently put them in terrible situations, had sudden change where you expect them to go out and score right away if it's Texas A&M, and they did on some of those, but we made some crucial stops in this game that were so important that could have really broken this game wide open early on. When we struggled on offense in the first half, it could have easily been 28-0 going into halftime. But we had some big plays, with some interceptions, some big stops here and there. But I do also have to give credit. I know I'm talking a lot about Danton Lynn, but I got to give credit to his supporting cast around him. Coach Henney, take a bow. Matt Entz, I know he's gone. Wish him nothing but the best at Fresno State, but he's done a great job of developing those linebackers. Coach Belk on the back end multiple times this year. We had some injuries. The Rutgers game, 4 of our 5 DBs are out in that game, but he had the young guys ready to go to step up. Same thing in this game. Had some of those young guys ready to go, and it's just so cool watching them develop these young players and allowing them to go out there and do what they do best. And that's why I love Coach Lynn, is because he is along, those lines, or his philosophy is, if you can't do this, this, and this, you're never going to play for me. No, I'm going to see what you do well, whether that's this, this, and this, and then I'm going to tailor that to my scheme. And then I'm going to take, some advice from Henney and Coach Entz, and we're going to pull a little bit from Doug Belk, and we're going to pull a little bit from these other coaches that had success, and we're going to form it into our scheme. And we're going to find 11 guys or and some backups who can go out there and fit into that, and then we can develop or adjust around that, and we're going to find the best way to go out there be a great defense. And he does just that, and you can hear me get excited about it, because as an offensive player, I've watched a ton of defense throughout my career, and I've always prepared to go against defenses. Danton Lynn is one of the best I've ever seen. He really is. And like I said, I'm so excited about the future of USC's defense. I just hope he signs a lifetime contract, no matter what that is, that he's going to be here for a very long time.
You mentioned the interceptions, and I thought it was notable because, as you mentioned in the preview, Reed was not a quarterback that was turnover happy. He was pretty safe with the ball, so I thought that was notable. Kamari Ramsey, diving catch. He's a guy who I'm so excited that we're going to see him again in Cardinal and Gold next year. Just a great, we've talked all season long, he was a spark plug for this defense to help be a teacher of Lynn's scheme on the field. Overall, what did you see about that performance from the defense to keep USC in the game?
Yeah, that's the story of this game. The reason that we won yesterday on Friday night is because of the turnovers by our defense and the stops that kept us in this game when our offense could not get things going, especially early on. That's why I say context matters a little bit, because it feels like, okay, we did give up some big plays. We did give up over 400 yards. We did give up, a good amount of points in this game. But overall, we found a way to get the job done and make those key interceptions that change momentum and also key stops that could have broken this game open. So that was awesome to see. But like you said, Marcel Reed had only 4 interceptions and 200 passing attempts coming into this game. He wasn't a guy that made a ton of turnover-worthy throws. And some of those weren't on Marcel Reed. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, too. I got to give credit where credit's due. I'm very excited about Reed's future. I think he's going to be a good player for years to come. But we did a great job. That Kamari Ramsey interception, that was unbelievable. Now, Reed was a little late on that throw. That is a cardinal sin. As a quarterback, I never throw late over the middle because there's just too many things that are happening. There's always going to be extra bodies in the middle of the field. But what an unbelievable play by Kamari Ramsey. I'm going to back up what you just said. Him and Pregnon are up there for 1A, 1B about guys that are coming back next year that we were surprised that we thought were going to leave. I am so excited that he's going to be back, a leader on this back end. Him and Dan Lynn are so close, and they've worked together now for 2 years going into year 3. That's going to be so much fun to watch how much better he can get. And then the other interception kept us in this game. They're going down there. They're driving. They're getting ready to score. And we get a pick by Keely Eure in the end zone, which was a crucial point in this game. And like I said, Texas A&M was about to score again. And when you struggle on offense and their offense is rolling and moving the football and putting up some yards and putting up some points, you get into that hole where it feels like we can't get things going, right? We can't play complementary football. Offense is struggling. Defense can't get a stop. We're putting our defense in a bad spot even when they do get a stop. But again, that was a great interception by Keely Eure. And then the biggest stop of this entire game, and probably the most important stop this entire season, was after Jaden Mayava threw his 3rd interception, and we talked about it earlier. We tried to force the football to Kamari Ramsey. They had a safety over the top when Jacoby Lane ran the Dover route, made a pick by the safety, and then they had the ball on our own 38-yard line. And it's 24-21 Texas A&M at that point, and they're getting ready to go down and take a 10-point lead if they go score, and we give them great field position. I think they got 1 first down, but then after that, so not technically a 3-and-out, but a 4-and-out, I guess you could say, but we hold them to a missed field goal. That was huge. That was a great series of play calls by Danton Lynn to force pressure, to force him to get uncomfortable, to force him to have to kick a field goal there, settle for 3, not even pick up 15, 20 yards and make it a chip shot. He forced a little bit of a longer field goal. They miss it. Then we come down and go 10 plays and take the lead after that and go score. So that was huge to see. So the interceptions and the key stops, especially that one, was big in this football game. And then I do have to be a little critical. And the thing that we have to get fixed, and something that keeps showing up a little bit on both sides of the ball. And luckily our offense went down and scored and won the game there at the end. But we've got to be able to make those stops in the fourth quarter when it matters most, right? We had a chance there when we took the lead after that touchdown. Texas A&M went down and drove and went the length of the field pretty much, finished or capped off by a Marcel Reed touchdown run. So we've got to find a way to get a stop there. But outside of that, and really the opening drive, with the way that our offense was putting our defense in a bad spot, our defense kept us in this football game and allowed our offense to get things going and win this game. So huge shout out to the not only the seniors on this defense, but the young guys that stepped up, and Coach Lynn and his staff for calling a great game and allowing this team to come back and win.
Well, you just transitioned me well into my next question. Young players stepping up. Also, new/returning faces as well. Eric Gentry made his return to the field. No one was more excited than he was. Man, the energy. You're grasping your heart for the audio listeners, Cody.
Do you remember pregame though, how I felt about Eric Gentry? Were you listening on the I don't know. I know you've got to do about 50,000 things pregame, but
I think we were talking about it. Yes.
I'm glad that EG came back, Eric Gentry. I'm glad he came back. I was nervous, so I was holding my breath for him to come back from injury. I was just so nervous. I didn't want him to get hurt in that game, but that's the type of leader he is. If he's ready to go, he's going to play. And I'm sure the coaches probably sat him down and said, hey, this is not to knock on the Vegas Bowl, not to knock on some of these lower level bowl games that aren't the college football playoff, but I think it's a little more important if it's not a playoff game, if it's not a New Year's Six game or the second round or whatever it may be in some of these playoff games, to get healthy if you're coming off an injury, to prioritize next season and getting ready for the offseason. But got to give credit to him. But I was out, and I'm sure I'm not the only Trojan, but I was holding my breath with Eric out there and hoping he just wasn't going to get hurt. But yeah, that was great to see. So happy that he can get back out there and get healthy and get back into a little bit of a rhythm going into the offseason.
Yeah. Well, luckily he was healthy throughout the game, did not leave injured. So your concerns were not warranted in that regard. But overall on that point though, some newer faces, younger faces, some backups got their time to shine on Friday. What do you see there, Cody?
Yeah, we've given a lot of credit to Coach Lynn and his staff, rightfully so, to Kamari, to Keely, some of these older players, the EG. But I've got to give a shout out to some of these young guys that are going to be impact players in the future. And they've really stepped up all year long with some of the injuries, some of the depth issues that USC has had on defense. But some of the guys that impressed me, great to see Braylon Shelby get a sack in that game. I'm so excited about his future. You know how high I am on him, and I've talked about him this entire offseason. The potential is there. It's just taking that next step, and he's so close, in my opinion, to really becoming a breakout star on this defense. Cam Fountain is going to be really good. Devin Tompkins, another guy who
Yeah.
continues to get better each week. I'm so excited about him. Probably a guy that I'm going to deem pretty early here as a breakout star for next year. Desmond Stevens at that linebacker position.
Yeah.
His physicality paired with his size, his speed, everything that he can do, whether he's at Mike Wilson, wherever you want to play him, his versatility, I think he's going to be a very good player. And you know, the trust that the coaching staff has in him. And what I mean by that is against UCLA on that got to have it fourth down play, he's in there on that play. You don't have a veteran out there. You don't have a senior, but they have Desmond Stevens out there in a package that they trust him to be out there in that crucial moment. So I'm excited for his future. Prophet Brown. No, he's not quite a young guy, but this is more so young guys / maybe backups or not, you know, full-time starters. Prophet Brown showed some flashes in this game,
Yeah.
played well against Rutgers as well. So I'm excited for his future. And I'm pretty much going to name the entire defense and some of these young guys. But one last guy I want to talk about, Christian Pierce. I think he's going to be a stud. And I talked to Taylor Mays, the assistant defensive back coach and USC legend. But I talked to Taylor Mays, and I'm sure if you're a USC fan, you know how high his opinion is and how much how much value that holds. But he was very excited about Christian and his potential and what he can do. Had some good flashes in this game. Had a couple tackles. Made some big plays. I talked about him in the pregame show. I talked about him last spring and this spring about how good I think he can be. So that gives you a lot of excitement of that safety position when we lose, some of those veterans back there with Keely Arnold, with Bryson Shaw. So a lot of young players stepped up in this game, and there's a lot of – and these are just guys that played a little bit in this game. There's a lot of other guys that played in the spring, some of these young corners, some of these young safeties that I think are going to make a big impact going forward in this future, and some freshmen that are coming in as well. But it's got to get you excited. I know, again, at the end of the year, we didn't live up to expectations. 7-6 is nowhere near the standard here at USC. The coaches know that. The players know that. But the positives that we take from this, or the positive that you have to take from this, is there's some young players and some young talent. If we continue to develop the right way, that can be some stars in the future and can really help this program get back to where it needs to be.
Well, that's the interesting thing. And obviously, we're going to have to tab this full conversation for another episode. But you have to think that the adversity of this season leaves a lasting impression on those younger players, those guys who are going to kind of set the foundation for the next several years, because I don't think you come back and win this game if you didn't have the season you had this year and you didn't know that you had it in you to keep fighting the way that they did. So I'm curious to see how much, or if at all, that impacts this roster and the character of their fight and will to win, if you will. I just think it's interesting in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, and Coach Riley said it all season long. And I know as a fan and as someone that's listening and as someone that's a diehard Trojan and someone who and when I say listening, I mean to every press conference, to every pregame talk, to all the interviews, all of that, all the media availability, when you hear we're so close or we're the most battle-tested team in the country or we've been there before, we've got to find a way to get it done. It can get to the point where you're like, okay, we'll find a way to get it done. We keep hearing it, and we've got to turn that corner. But I think to your point, Keely, that's why we won this game, because we could lean back on those games where we had fourth quarter leads in every single game besides Notre Dame. When it came down to the last couple of series and we either found a way to get it done or we couldn't, we could lean back on those moments and apply that to this game. And some of these young players that, although they may not have played a bunch of crucial reps or meaningful reps in those games, were right there to watch and learn from and see and evaluate in their own way and write notes down. And so when I'm in that position, no matter when it's going to be, whether it's in the bowl game or next year, I know how to prepare and I know how to go out there and get the job done. And they did just that. So that was a lot of fun to watch. And it's you love those close games until you're on the wrong side of them, right? But when you have those close games and it comes down to the end and it's back and forth, just the high that you feel from that of being a player or a fan, and you win the game and get the job done, it just gives you so much optimism. And we had so many chances this year to do it, but I truly believe, like Coach Riley said, we are one of the most battle-tested teams in the entire country, and that's going to pay dividends going forward. We just have to make sure that we can turn the corner, and it's just not all talk, right? It's not all window dressing saying, oh, we've had these close games, we'll get there eventually. You've got to get there, and you've got to get there quick, and that's got to start, and happened here, but it's got to start with this offseason and going into week 1 next year.
Well, kind of continuing on this topic, we've heard USC's coaches kind of allude to it, and we've talked about it on this show all season long, but there are some pieces needed for Lynn and this defense to execute Lynn's scheme to its highest ability. If you're this coaching staff, what are your portal needs, if you will?
Yeah, this is kind of the last topic I have about the defense, and I think it's something. And I, if you've heard the show before or listened or watched, whatever it may be, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but it is true. Priority one this offseason is we need to find guys in the trenches and develop a true pass rusher, a dominant pass rusher, a player that can get after the quarterback down after down, a Tuli Pelotu, kind of that type of player. Now, Tuli was an all around player, right? So that's why I think he was so good. But I think it's so important for us to go out and get an Abdul Carter, right? To go get a guy that is a pass rush specialist, good player overall, but can get after the quarterback and is a nightmare on game days, right? And that's something that we struggled with this season. We saw flashes of guys stepping up, but we didn't have someone to really take over that role. And if you want to be dominant in the Big Ten, if you want to be a competitor in the Big Ten, like an Ohio State, like an Oregon, like Indiana did this year, and you can knock on them. And I know they struggled in the college football playoff against Notre Dame, but they had guys up front on defense that were very good. They were number one at stopping the run. They did a great job in getting after the quarterback. Oregon did so too. Penn State is very good. They had 4 high-level pass rushers up front, led by Abdul Carter, and then also Ohio State, year in and year out, has a dominant front seven, specifically that front 4. We have to be able to do that if we want to compete at a high level in the Big Ten. Because when you have a dominant pass rusher, it is important for multiple reasons. It gives you an advantage in multiple areas. The first one is it creates havoc in the backfield. And I can tell you as a former quarterback, I absolutely hate havoc in the backfield, right? It makes it so much more difficult to go through your read, to go through progression, to go from 1 to 2 to 3, when that clock in your head goes from 3 seconds to 1.5 because you have a premier pass rusher on the edge. You have a red dot player, a Myles Garrett, an Aaron Donald on the interior, right? You have a TJ Watt on the outside. And what I mean by red dot player, for those of you that have seen the preview episode, you know what I'm talking about, but it's when the coach gets up there with the clicker and the laser pointer, he's shining that red dot on JJ Watt or TJ Watt or whoever it may be on the outside, saying, if we don't block this guy, then it's going to be a problem all night long, especially for our quarterback when he has to drop back and pass. And that's a frustrating place to be when you're up there and you're, okay, I'm reading the safeties. I know I know the progression. I know the route. I know the coverage, where the linebackers at, what's the front. But then I'm peeking over there at Myles Garrett, right before the ball snapped because I'm worried about my blind side and getting hit. We have to find one of those guys, or we have to develop one of those guys that's already on the roster. And I think we do have guys that could potentially be that. But then the second important thing for that, and why it's important to find that premier pass rusher, that dominant pass rusher off the edge, interior, whatever it may be, because that forces the opposing offensive coordinator to put more focus on that one player by sending a running back to go chip block, by trying to get a double team, a triple team. I mean, watch on Sundays. You watch those NFL games. How many times you see Myles Garrett with 2 or 3 guys trying to block him, right? When you see Aaron Donald sending a center guard and sometimes even a tackle down there to get 2 or 3 guys, or a running back having a chip block on some of those guys up front. But what does that do? That allows one-on-one everywhere else up front, right? When you have a guy, and I keep using Penn State because we previewed them before, and I'm not saying they're the best team in the country. They're the best, they're the standard, and I don't want to give them too much credit, but when we previewed them up front, Abdul Carter, who's going to be a top 10, potentially top 5 pick. I don't know how high he can go. He's a very good player, but he's going to be a high-end first-round draft pick. The guys around him were so good because there was so much focus on Carter that the other guys could eat. They got their one-on-ones. They got a ton of opportunities. So I say all that to say, yes, you've got to have that premier guy, that high-end pass rusher that can get after the quarterback, especially on passing situations, but you've got to have a great supporting cast around him. I truly believe we have guys on the roster, some of these young guys that can be that. We've got some important pieces coming in, both from the portal, some of these freshman signees. So it's going to be fun to watch. But at the end of the day, if you want to compete at a high level in the Big Ten, you've got to control the trenches on both sides of the ball. But I think it's more important to have a very good defensive line that can really give opposing offenses a lot of trouble on Saturdays.
Alrighty, Cody, this is normally when I would ask you for any final thoughts on the defensive performance, but considering that this is the end of the podcast, because we usually do questions, but we're not for this episode, final thoughts on the whole. It's the final recap episode of the 2024 season. It's crazy how fast these seasons go by, but final thoughts, Cody.
No, I'm gonna bite my tongue on this one because I do have a ton of final thoughts on the season as a whole. But like we mentioned, we're gonna have one of those episodes coming up that kind of recaps the entire year and what to expect going into next year. And some, we talk about the defensive line, the quarterback battle. We're gonna get a little bit more in depth of what this offseason will look like or what it needs to look like so that USC can take that next step forward and watch some of the games back. I'm going to go back and watch some of the early film and get a better understanding of that and do some self-scout going forward. So I'm going to save my final thoughts for that episode. You hear Coda barking because we're ready to get out of here. And then another thing too, just for both of us, I've said it before, I'm a new dad now, so I'm going to take a little bit of time off since the season's now over. Keely deserves a vacation. I know she has been working very hard this entire season. You also do basketball. So you've got a little bit of time here for the new year. So we don't know exactly when that episode's coming out, but it's going to be a very question-focused episode. It's going to be, okay, we're going to give our thoughts on it. We're going to give kind of what you need to know, what to expect going forward. But I want it to be very heavy on what your questions are, what you want to know. So look out for that, but we're not going to make any promises when that will be. I promise we're not going to disappear for an entire month. And everyone's going to be like, where'd everybody go? But it may not be next week, maybe a week or two, just so we have a little bit of time off with the season ending because we are both exhausted. But other than that, no, I mean, it's been a frustrating year. Yes, there's been a ton of storylines. Yes, we are all hungry as fans, as a Trojan family, as the players, the coaching staff, to get back to where we want to be as a football program and competing for Big Ten championships, competing for national championships. There's a lot to learn from this year to help us get to that area. But overall, you've got to take a lot of the positives that happened this season and use those going forward. The biggest one for me is the players and the core guys that we have on this roster, the young players that got thrown into the fire this year. But yeah, I want to be optimistic. I want to say the sky's the limit, but there are some things that we need to address, and I truly believe this coaching staff will address them. But let's just take it 1 week at a time right now. Let's watch the rest of the college football playoff. Hopefully our players are watching that and locked in a little bit about, hey, we want to be there next year. We need to watch what these teams do so that we know how we can get to that spot and be competitive and go play for a national championship. But overall, love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting us and listening to us. This isn't the outro to saying we're not going to see you again, because obviously we're going to do episodes, if you know Keely and I, all off season long. But for preview, for recap episodes, you guys have been amazing. The questions have been great. Not always the most positive, but I get it. And I promise you, we have the same frustration and we love USC football as much as all of you do. But overall, fight on. Love you guys. With that being said, I am done. My final outro, actually, of 2024. It's because next episode will be 2025.
That's a good point. Well, happy New Year's to everyone. Like Cody said, thank you all for tuning in all season long. We really appreciate you guys. You are the reasons why we do this podcast. You make it turn. We appreciate all the questions and all that. So like Cody said, I just want to echo everything you said, Cody, because you wrapped it up pretty well. But I'm going to wrap us up. I was about to ask you final thoughts. I don't know how to ask you final thoughts without doing questions, but I'm going to wrap us up. It's a little weird, but thanks so much for tuning in. Very happy that USC was able to end this season with a win. But that's going to wrap it up. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.